Hey everyone, this is Ben from T3 bringing you another Store Championship game from Shuffle and Cut on January 9th. This is a Store Champ before the Most Wanted list takes effect, so it's worth noting these are not Most Wanted list decks, and it's awesome. That's what these players came to play, and everyone came with very, very high-powered MWL illegal decks. And on the left we have Gabriel Santiago running against Sync, new NBN ID out of Data and Destiny. And we're getting right to it here with NBN installing over the R&D and sure gamble and gaining a buck. Looks like he has a lot of ice in his hand, so this doesn't seem to be the typical typical NBN deck that you see every day. Sync as well is just not an often played ID, which is it's a big shame. I actually really like this ID. I think it's an awesome ability for a 40 card deck with 15 influence. Already maybe a little bit better than my favorite previous NBN ID, which was The World Is Yours. But Gabe seeing the Archangel out of HQ. Obviously, Sync does not fire it, not going to help him out too much. And going back in and seeing the wraparound. So Gabe is able to have a pretty good economy turn here. See a bunch of stuff out of HQ, gains a lot of money between Sure Gambles and Gabe's ability, and is ready to go again here. And NBN and Sync here just icing up the centrals, and really wants to make Gabe have to pay for it. You know, the less you can trigger Gabe's ability, the better off you're going to be. How I always feel is that if you can prevent criminals from running for free, you will always win the game. That probably is true with a lot of IDs, although I have to say I find it more true with criminals than anything else. And we see that toll booth rezzed over HQ immediately. That's crazy. You never see something like that this early. That might just be a countermeasure against Gabe. This Sync player might not be, or might just want to make sure that Gabe doesn't get to trigger his ID as much as possible, and signed the inside job in for essentially free with Gabe's ability, and just sees that Archangel. And Gabe's wisely chosen not to install things here. He knows the Archangel threat is there, and is taking the axes as well. He can get them in a really efficient way. And I did see, it looks like he has a Plascrete, a couple of Count Siphons, which I'm sure are just going to get discarded pretty soon here, and drawing into the midseason. So we see news teams, we see midseasons, and all sorts of crazy stuff. So this is a tag-heavy Sync deck, and drawing a global food as well, which is an interesting include out of Sync. I feel like you would be more likely to see that out of... Yeah, well, hell, I guess it's not that strange to see global food. This is probably one of the decks that's going to try and fast advance global food out, either the turn you install it or maybe even the turn after you install it. I know decks like this do have the power to do both. Different conditions, of course, but worth noting that is a threat that I expect we'll see in this game. And Gabe, our criminal here, just drawing up and moneying hard. It looks like, oh geez, those are tough credits. Looks like that's $13 that Gabe has available to him, and getting that Plascrete installed, that's going to be huge. This could actually be a Tag Me deck that we're seeing from Gabe with the 2 Siphons and the Plascrete. And if it's a Tag Me deck against Sync, then it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. The starting side of Sync's ID isn't going to be doing a whole lot if this is in fact a Tag Me deck, although we might see Gabe hold off on the tags until the last possible moment. And it looks like he does have the Fairy. Oh, I do see a Sneak Door there, so a lot of avenues of play here for Gabe after the Plascrete, but he doesn't want to see that Archangel again. That is for sure. but opting just to go searching through his deck here with a special order. Probably going to get the Corroder is what I would have to imagine. Although knowing the Archangel is still in HQ, oh, going for Fem. So I'm going to say this is definitely a Tag Me deck. With Gabe going for Fem with the special order, because he can just install Fem, gain a buck, and account siphon, and end up with a bunch of NBN's money, and that would just expose NBN, bust him wide open, I expect. And yep, that looks like that's a play that we're going for, Femming the toll booth over HQ, which is just a solid play. You never want to see toll booth get femmed, let alone on the third turn of the game. That's that's an enormous swing. And the siphon, of course, and here come the tags. I'm sure of it. And most likely, we're going to see that Archangel. I expect the Archangel's going to go over HQ at this point, because why not? That would be a really, really strong server. You know, even for David, that's a really heavy server. So, and of course, with the Archangel over the toll booth, you can ensure that the Archangel bounces a Fem. Then you can't Fem through the toll booth unless you pay the another 9, and it makes the whole process miserable. I think that's a feint. I think Gabe just drew a feint. So yeah, that's definitely a feint. Okay, so based on that, that's new. I don't think I've ever seen feint run in a tournament before, but I expect that we're going to see feints into emergency shutdowns out of gate. This is a really cool deck, actually. I'm digging it a lot, and we do see the Fisk investment seminars as well. So this seems to be a huge HQ pressure deck. Tag Me HQ pressure, just kind of going in, feint, bypass ice on HQ, emergency shutdown, and with that femmed toll booth in front of being the innermost ice, that feint could possibly get some huge benefits later, essentially allowing Gabe to bypass 3 ice over HQ for free, or for 1 credit. And we see the Fisk right off the bat there, forcing a bunch more cards into Sync's hand. And I do see a Beal at the very least. Most likely what I'm expecting here is that Sync installed the wraparound over the remote, start getting that set up and established. If Sync can sneak out a Beal or even an Astro script here, that could be really good. But with only 1 ice, I expect... Okay, so instead Gabe going for the bank job, which is awesome. That's a great play. Forcing the res of the Data Raven. I don't see any reason why why Gabe wouldn't just let the Data Raven fire. He's already tagged from the account siphon, and he's clearly going to try and keep that type of pressure going. And this does put Sync into dangerous account siphon territory. Although if that is an Archangel, Sync could pay to res it. I think Gabe has the money to beat the Trace, though, so would be able to keep the Fem on the board. And discarding down here. And the Ice over Archives as well. So I wasn't able to see what those cards were, but our NBN Sync did have to discard 2 agendas. This looked like a Global Food and a Beal, along with a News Team. So I expect that, and I think I see a Jackson still in hand. So that card in the remote has to be a Jackson, because I mean, why would you ever trash those 2 agendas if you didn't have a Jackson to protect you? So Gabe opting to check out the central instead. And yeah, this is definitely a tag me deck. I actually see, it looks like Gabe has the 2 other account siphons in his hand. So probably looking for some type of code gate breaker, decoder at this point. But all of those cards in his hand are super, super valuable. And yeah, so running archives, forcing the Jackson res. I expect here the last click is going to be to check R&D. Yep, to see another card. So taking the tags, I'm sure. Oh no, he took the negative points. I'm actually a little bit surprised at Gabe taking the negative points and not the tags. He doesn't seem like he's gonna really care too much in this build. But hey, again, worth mentioning, this is a top 8 game, and I did not make it, so I have no bearing to talk whatsoever on what I think is a good play or not. And NBN drawing. So NBN, I like this sync deck too. It has a bunch of options. Looks like he still has a Jackson. I see a Scorched Earth. I see a Psychographics, and he's still holding the midseason. And I'm pretty sure that Gabe is sitting on no less than 3 or 4 tags at this point, so that Psychographics is turned on. And he does have a Beal in his hand as well. Sync does have a Beal. So Sync might be hoping to run up the tags or allow Gabe to run his tags up on himself and then psycho out a Beal. Even psychoing out a Beal for 3 points, getting the overscore bonus would be huge in this game. And if you can make it worth 4 points, I guess it enables the breaking news play, but since this NBN deck is running global food, I expect that it's a bunch of global foods and astroscripts and Beals. Just with that makeup, he can account for 15 points worth of agendas? No, more than that. No, that would account for. Oh, geez, my math is terrible. That would be everything actually. So. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're not going to see any breaking news or anything like that. This deck most likely, this sync deck I expect, just goes for the fast advance, a global food out in 1 turn, which is a pretty good way to go if your opponent doesn't have any, you don't expect them to have any clots. So just doing some evaluating here. Counting cards in his hand. He might be debating on this Scorch play here and install credit the global food. Install credit the global food. So I would assume it looks like that Sync is going to try and psycho advance out that card, and if he doesn't, if Gabe does decide to decides to go into the server, it's going to end up with Gabe getting more tags, which then in turn allows Sync to cycle out more agendas. So I guess either way, it's very cyclical. The deck feeds into itself rather well, I think. And yep, taking the tag and the power counter. So Gabe is going to get the global food, but it's actually only worth 1 point with that news team, which is going to hurt a little bit. And again, this kind of is starting to play into Sync's hands. I don't think Gabe has seen any of Sync's punish cards. So, obviously he's going in expecting the Scorched Earth. He has 2 Plascreed on the board now, and we're going to see a mid-season here. I'm not sure what the money count is going to be. So yeah, Gabe just took a bunch more tags. So that Psychographics play is real. That's a real threat. I think he could easily score out a Beal for a bunch of money, and he has $7. So Gabe really needs to start doing some damage to Sync's credit pool. And I think those are I've had worses, or that's at least one I've had worse. So we're seeing all sorts of crazy cards out of this Gabe deck. I love that this made it into top 8. You never see stuff like this, especially in a most wanted list era. You absolutely never saw this type of deck, or at least I didn't. So I am pumped that there's players able to build something like this that is not rogue, I want to say, but like off the charts, man. You don't ever see things like this. So being able to build and compete at such a high level with this deck is just awesome. It's just awesome. And that was the architect over HQ as Gabe goes into another account siphon. And that Peacock is, I'm sure, the compromise. As I mentioned, Turing is everywhere, and he probably didn't like the limited use of Rex. So that Peacock, coupled with all of the money in the world from account siphon and Gabe's ability and Desperado, probably a good play here. Even though it's not really a great breaker, definitely not heralded as one of the best in the game. It does the job and lets you get in. So, especially when you have a siphon on the other end, and I think he did steal the $2 that that Sync had. So, wisely keeping the Corp poor at this point, I think is the way you got to go. Even if you're not afraid of the Scorches, and I don't honestly believe that Gabe is with the 2 Scorched Earth. Psychographics is a real threat. And I did see that a couple of times on the day as well. Decks that were trying to just tag storm, psycho out things. I did see a bunch of tag storm decks on the day. There was a lot of tagging, bagging, or fast advancing, and psychographics, and all of this stuff. I know I myself was actually playing Sync for this tournament, so there was a lot of that going on. Tons of NBN. As I mentioned, no most wanted list, so Astro scripts were free, and Gabe playing that data dealer, running on the quantum predictive model. And Gabe trashing, of course, the news team. So this seems like this might be solely a meta deck. That the Gabe deck might be mostly a meta deck in response to all of that news team and tag storm and psychographics and scorched earth. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Gabe has another Plascrete hiding in his deck someplace. This feels like a deck that would play 3 Plascretes and is kind of going balls out, like just going full stop, no pausing, no delay, which is that's a criminal, man. That's awesome. Do it, get in, make money to do it all over again, and don't stop all night. And we still see Sneak Door, the R&D interface that I've had worse is a really cool use of influence, as I mentioned. And I believe that comes at a cost of 2. So we've seen the R&D interface. We've seen I've had worse. I'm actually not sure if we've seen any other sources of influence. So we might start seeing some bigger cards. We might start seeing some bigger cards soon. NBN seeing that sweeps card gets them back in the money, and I think at this point, when you've seen 2 Plascretes, you really need to start abandoning or considering abandoning the Scorched Earth plan. I know he probably really wants it to hit, but there just isn't. It's so difficult, especially against this style of deck. Where they're expecting to be tags and are just going for it, and especially when you just get siphoned over and over and over, you need at least 6 credits to go for the win against this type of thing. And of course, no credits is going to make the Psycho play extremely difficult as well. So this is a pretty formidable deck type, I would say, against this type of build. The Gabe deck is pretty formidable, especially with that I've had worse for extra card draw. and protection. Yeah, double up on your stuff, makes that influence hurt a lot less when you're making the deck. I'm sure that Gabe only really has I've Had Worse and Fisk Investments for draw. And after installing the RDI, hitting R&D, not seeing anything worthwhile, every NBN player, I feel like there's a collective sigh of relief every single time there's a RDI or Maker's Eye run, and you don't hit an agenda. It always feels like Christmas. So probably a big deep breath. And as I had guessed, predicted there, we do see the third Plascrete in Gabe's hand. I expect that will hit the table very soon, if nothing else than to provide the extra protection. And really, I think that the third Plascrete pretty much makes the Scorch Kill dead. I don't think that play is really active. The Archangel's not going to hit. You're not going to be able to bounce up 2 Plascretes in a turn. You're not going to be able to... you don't have enough clicks, simply. You don't have enough recursion to really get it going, unless you get lucky with a couple of Jackson plays and Jackson draws. But we've already seen 2 Jacksons on the Corp side, so that doesn't seem like it's too likely. And the wraparound's going to do some work for at least a little while on NBN here. And finally, we see it. Gabe's had it in his hand the entire game. Oh, man. So, early game, we saw the wraparound. We saw the install over archives. I wasn't sure what it was. Assumed it might be a pop-up. But the 2 wraparounds on the centrals are so good right now. Gabe does not have an answer to that. The Data Sucker I see in his hand, there's some more influence for counting. Data Sucker not doing a whole lot of help here. He really needs to dig for a Corroder, or I guess, hell, even a Breach at this point. You know, if that's how you're going to get into R&D, you may as well go for it. Especially with the RDI, you know, anything. And we see a Mimic there, too. So a lot of answers just don't have a good response to get in anywhere. And we do see that third Plascrete. So Scorch is dead. Scorch and Traffic Accident is a pretty dead play here. Most likely, if we haven't already, Sync is going to start losing those cards, freeing up the slots for other things. Maybe try and money up, money install Psycho out something later. I see that as a pretty likely avenue of play. Sync's really on the clock, the NBN player. Once Gabe finds his Fractor, he's in a little bit of trouble, and I think if Gabe does find the Fractor, you lose the Fairy. We haven't really seen anything besides that Data Raven. I just don't think there's going to be any big Sentry played out of NBN, especially not out of a Sync deck, when your Sentries are already going to be like Data Ravens and maybe Newshound or Turnpike and things like that. I think Fem would be able to deal with it, or you can just walk through it. It's a Tag Me deck after all. And going for the Dirty Laundry on HQ, well, if we don't have a Siphon, that's one way to do it. I'm not sure if it's actually gaining a money. I didn't see how the credits flip, but now, and man, Gabe still has not seen the Psycho play, so I don't think he's expecting that. I don't even know if we've seen any hint of other threats. I mean, a closed accounts would be huge right now. And I don't know how you don't play that as Sync. Your ability tends to lend into the fact that your opponent's going to be tagged all the time. In archetypes like this, the Tag Me, against that, closed accounts is your best friend. So I think you really need to account for that when you're building your deck. And I guess it could just be a one-off, which would be really, really distressing. But honestly, if that's something that you expect to see, especially when you're relying on, at the very least, Scorched Earths for your kills, Lily Lockwell might be a good answer to that. Lets you get your kill, lets you get your closed accounts, and works against pretty much any matchup. But alas, we do not see any of those cards, or at least we have not seen them yet. And it's still a very low-scoring game. I believe it's a 2 that's a global food that Gabe has, so it is 2-1 now that the news team has been dealt with. There we go. So, interesting. Playing overwriting the fairy with the corroder and unlocking R&D, unlocking the secret. And now R&D is free for 2 cards. So we'll be seeing a lot of of R&D. Is that a paper tripping? Is it? Oh, it is! That's awesome! Oh, that's amazing! That just shut down Sync. Okay. Wow. So that has to be a one-of or something. It's a priority event that removes all of your tags. All of your tags. So Gabe just went from, or Sync just went from threatening a Psycho to win in 1 turn to having no ground to stand on. Sync doesn't have money, and getting that global food again. So Sync doesn't have money, or Sync does have money, actually, and a lot of rest stuff, but it's so little, like, I can't. Oh, that's such a great play. Top 8 Netrunner play, folks. This is awesome. Playing the meta decks works. As long as you can make it through Swiss, meta decks work. And Sync just trying to build up and fortify a little bit here. I think Sync needs to trick something out, but there's no reason for Gabe not to run on something at this point. I mean, R&D is free. It actually effectively gains him money. Effectively gains Gabe money with the Data Sucker and Desperado to hit R&D and see 2 cards a turn. That's awesome. That's just great. And I think, and after going, and he's not even remembering to get his Data Sucker counters. And seeing the quantum predictive model no longer having an effect since Gabe is not tagged. Super good. Running R&D again to try and see stuff, but instead seeing that Archangel. So yeah. So the Archangel triggers, and Sync does have more money than Gabe now. Surprisingly, I'm surprised it only took him this entire game to get more money. So may as well use it while you have advantage. And it allows, so now HQ is totally protected, 100% protected. And we do know that Sync is hiding at least a Beal in his hand. I think there might be two Scorched Earths now, along with an All-Seeing Eye. All-Seeing Eye is not going to do anything for this matchup. And it's funny, actually. That's really funny that we see All-Seeing Eye here, but we don't see Closed Accounts. It's kind of an example of how much meta shifts can really have an outcome on the game. So on Gabe's side here, on the left side, while he just... Oh, so that's game. Pulls the Beal out of archives, or excuse me, out of R&D, and we see how these meta decks had a huge impact, these meta calls. Gabe all in on Tag Me, playing paper tripping, which you never see, and unapologetically taking tags, and just awesome, whereas Sync is trying to play against Valencia, which doesn't help against Gabe. Story of the meta, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you next time.